Today's daf we're going to learn is Moed Katan Yud Zayin. It's the daf for Shabbat. Today's daf is sponsored by Cal Robinson and Art Gould in loving memory of Art's father, Joseph, Yosef ben Shlomo Shabtai v'Rachel Zichrono Livracha. Today is his 23rd yahrzeit. Joe was an ordinary man of extraordinary dignity, decency, and dedication. After World War II, he worked for the INS, welcoming immigrants to membership in America. I miss him and wish we had had more time together. We're going to get started with our daf at the bottom of Tetzayin Amabet from the words Amar Rabbi Tanchum, 2 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Tanchum berei de Rabbi Chia ish Kfar Akko. Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha Amar Rabbi Simlai. So it was passed down in his name, etc. Ve'amrila, some people say Amar Rabbi Tanchum Amar Rav Huna. Ve'amrila, and some people said Amar Rav Huna lechude. So Rav Huna said it on his own, not that Rabbi Tanchum said it in the name of Rav Huna. Here is what he says. If a student gets upset with the way someone treats him and puts someone in excommunication, it's actually effective. Detanya, as it says in a Braita. If someone is in nidoy from the rabbi, he's also in nidoy, we had this on the previous stuff, from his student. But if someone is in menudeh from his student, he's not menudeh l'rav. The rav doesn't have to treat him as if he was excommunicated. So l'rav hu de'eno menudeh. From here you can infer halakule alma menudeh. It sounds like anyone from the student and below he would be excommunicated from, or she would be. Lemai, for what? If it has to do with something against God, ein chokhmah ve'ein tfuna ve'ein etzah neged Hashem. There is no such thing. If anyone goes against God, there's nothing to be said. Meaning, if it was against God, this person would be excommunicated from everybody. So therefore, it must be, it's referring to someone who has does something out of lack of respect for a Talmid Chacham. The Talmid Chacham, the student, can put him in excommunication, and that's effective for everybody else. So what do you see? If a student puts someone in excommunicates someone out of, they didn't respect him, then the nidoy is effective. Amar Rav Yosef, tzurva merabanan avedina lenafshe b'milta de psikale. A Talmid Chacham is able to make a judgment on his own if it's a clear-cut issue. This is always a big debate. When is something a clear-cut issue? Actually, a bit of a question about this, because in the other sugya it talks about how anyone can actually take the law into their own hands if it's very clear-cut. It's obviously a bit of a dangerous statement. How, right, where we draw the line between knowing that we're sure, many times we think that we're sure that we're right, but this seems to say only a Talmid Chacham. Some people say we're actually talking about excommunication here, and it's not about law in general, but it's, whether it's, if you say it's law, it could be money. Let's say someone takes your money and you're sure that he took your money. If you're a Talmid Chacham, you can grab the money back. Okay, but it could be that we're only talking about excommunication here, and that when it comes to monetary things, anyone can actually take the law into their own hands. Anyway, that's a whole big issue in and of itself. We'll see that much later when we're in Nizikin and we get to that sugya. Right, Nizikin is the Seder after Nashim. Next Seder up is Nashim after we finish Moed, and then after that will be Nizikin, damages. Hahu sorva merabanan davusanu shum ane. Okay, now we get to a very interesting issue. We have a case, and why is this interesting? Because it's very relevant, unfortunately, nowadays. You have a Talmid Chacham, a rabbi, a student, someone who's learning, who there's very bad rumors about, okay? And we assume we mean of a sexual or, issue. Now, some people say it means he's a heretic, and that's what we're talking about. But most people think it has to do with someone who's involved in sexual misconduct. So now, Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says the following, and here you're going to see exact same thing that goes on in our communities, which is a bit of a deliberation here. Here, Rav Yehuda is going to have his own deliberation. Hey, what should we do? Lishamte, if I put him in excommunication, Rabbanan. He's a Talmid Chacham. He's teaching people. They need him in the Beit Midrash. You can't live without him. He's obviously a prominent person, right? We always hear these voices when this happens with someone who's prominent. But how are we going to manage without this person? And obviously all the people who say maybe it's not really true. Anyway, Lo Lishamte, he says, but Rabbi Yehuda says, but on the other hand, I have this other issue, which is if I don't excommunicate him, I'm going to basically desecrate the name of God if I let him go, continue what he's doing and say, oh, we can learn from this person who did some really inappropriate things. We're in a problem. So what does he do? He doesn't know what to do. Amar le Rabba bar bar Chana. He goes to Rabba bar Chana. He says, Midish mi'ala bahach. Have you heard anything? Have you ever learned anything about this? Right? It was obviously the first time Rabbi Yehuda came across this kind of issue. Amar le hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan. This is what Rabbi Yochanan says. My dechtiv ki siftei kohen yishmeru da'at v'torah yivakshu mipiu. Okay, the sfatayim of the kohen should, the lips of the kohen should watch over the knowledge, and Torah yivakshu mipi, and people will want to learn Torah from them. Ki malach Hashem tzvaotu, because he is an angel of God. So comes the interpretation. What does Rabbi Yochanan say about this? This is quoted by Rabba bar Chana. Im domeh harav lamalach Hashem yivakshu Torah mipiv. If he's like an angel, and you should learn Torah from him. Im lav, but if he's not an angel, meaning this person, you shouldn't be learning Torah from him, right? This is generally what we say, right? Who wants to learn Torah from someone who was involved in these terrible things? So we're going to hear how the story went down. Shante Rav Yehuda, he excommunicates him. L'self, ichalash Rav Yehuda. Time goes on, Rav Yehuda gets sick. Atu Rabbanit l'Shiur, the rabbis come to see how he is. Va'ata iu nami bahadayim, he comes with the other rabbis. Karchazi Rav Yehuda chiyeh. When Rav Yehuda sees him, he smiles. See, it wasn't exactly a smile of, we'll see. Amarle, he sees Rav Yehuda smiling at him. He says to him, Lo mistayef deshamte lahu gavra. Is it not bad enough that you excommunicated this person? He's talking about himself in the third person. Is it not bad enough that you excommunicated me? But you're mocking me, you're laughing at me. He understood a smile as a mockery. Amarle la b'didak mechayachna. I'm not laughing at you. When I get into the world to come, I guess he was feeling like my life is about to end. And he says, when I get into the world to come, b'dicha da'atai, I just want to check one translation of a word here. Second, b'dicha da'atai, right, sorry. B'dicha da'atai. What he says is, okay, he says, why am I happy? Okay, kind of stops the sentence in the middle. Because when I get up to heaven and they ask me, how did you do? I'll say, I didn't even kiss up to this person. In other words, I was very clear about my decision. So Rabbi Yehuda dies. What happens? He goes into the Beit Midrash. Amar Lahu, as the person who was excommunicated goes into the Beit Midrash, he sees an opportunity. Rabbi Yehuda is now dead. He's the person who excommunicated. Comes this rabbi and he says to the rabbis, Amar Lahu, Shruli, okay, now it's time. Take off my excommunication. Okay, so now, Amrule Rabbanan, what did they say to him? They said, Gavr the Chashiv ke Rabbi Yehuda, we don't have anyone as great as Rabbi Yehuda to undo this. In other words, it has to be someone of his stature. So go to Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, ask him what to do. So Azal Kameh, he goes up to Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, right? It's a great story. Amar Leila Rabbi Ami. So Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, now what's the issue? He doesn't know this guy from a hole in the wall. So he doesn't know the situation. So he says to Rabbi Ami, Puk iyem bedine, go look at his judgment. Go check it out and see what happened. And if you think that we should undo it, then let's undo it. Rabbi Ami bedine, savra lemishrela. He says, I think this guy is deserving of undoing it. But not so quickly. Amad Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani al Varglav. He gets up on his feet. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, he was an elderly guy. We'll see. Gets up on his feet and says, Mama, Uma shivcha shel Beit Rebbe lo nahagu chachamim kalut rosh beniduya shalosh shanim. Coming to the servant for Beit Rebbe, the maid servant of Beit Rebbe, she put someone in excommunication. She's famous. We always see her. I assume it's the same one. She put someone in nidui, and the rabbis didn't undo it for 3 years. We'll see her story later. Yehuda chavereinu alacha kama v'kama. So Yehuda, our friend, what? We're going to ignore his nidui? He put this guy in excommunication. The fact that he's dead now, it doesn't mean we're going to undo it right away. That's what Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says, right? You can see the scene, right? The rabbi said, oh, no, he's okay now. He's changed. And everyone's like, what are you talking about, right? This guy deserves serious excommunication. So what happened now? Amar Rabbi Zera, man de kaman de ata ha'idna hai saba bebe midrasha. Teha kama shane lo ata. He says, you know what? I'm going to take this as a sign. you haven't been in the Beit Midrash in a really long time because you're old. And why all of a sudden did you happen to be here today when we had this discussion and you piped in with your opinion? Shmam, I'm going to assume from there, I should listen to you and we shouldn't undo this excommunication. So, lo sharele, they didn't undo it. What happens next? He goes out crying and he's very sad about it. Ata zibura, comes a hornet, vitarkea amte ushachid, and bites him in his private parts and he dies. So now, okay, you think the story's over. He's dead. What more could happen? Well, they try to bring him to the kever of the Hasidim. I guess they thought that he was still a good person, or maybe that he had done tshuva. They bring him to the kever of the Hasidim, right, which means the pious people, the lo kibluhu. They wouldn't accept him. What does that mean? They're dead. Well, apparently a snake came by the cave and wouldn't let them get into the cave. So they realized, again, sign, no can do. They put him by the cave of the Dayanim where they were buried. See how they buried people here, right, in different sections. So the judges, and they took him. Okay, now why the judges take him, right? Maybe it shows the judges are a little corrupt. I don't know, but we'll see right now. My timer. There's a few different versions here, and it's not the most clear-cut sentence, but why did the judges accept him? It seems because he did like Rabbi Eli. Rabbi Eli Omer, if you see that your Yetzer is getting the better of you, your evil inclination, what should you do to stop? Well, you should go, right? Here, take a prominent person, put him in a city where nobody knows him. It's very hard to do that nowadays because everybody knows everyone. But, right, there's internet, Facebook, Instagram, everything. But try to remove this person. Put him in a place, in those days it was easier, where nobody knows who he is. He basically makes himself low. He wears black. He covers himself in black. He becomes like a nobody. And then he can do whatever he wants. By doing this, nobody will really pay him much attention. And he won't have the power he had in the other places. And then he can manage and live his life without desecrating the name of God. Okay, so they say, basically, it sounds like, even though it's a little tricky, he didn't really do this, but I guess the idea is they really thought he did tshuva, and that's why the judges accepted him. So what's left in this story to see is Shifrasha Beit Rebbe Mahi. What's the story? The Amta Debei Rebbe, the maidservant of Rebbe, Chazite Lau Gavra Dava Machi Lebeno Gadol. She saw some person beating up his older son. Amra lehavi ahu gavra b'shamta. She puts him in excommunication. You're putting a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Why? If you beat your child who's older, you're going to teach your child that violence is okay. Then your child will become violent. Basically putting a stumbling block. You have to wonder why they don't say this for a young child. It's the same thing, right? It's very interesting because this daf is what you wouldn't exactly expect to find in the Gemara written so many years ago, where there was less understanding of sexual misconduct. And right, forget about, right, when the time of the Gemara, even 100 years ago, 50 years ago, there was much less understanding of it. And this issue of beating children, right, and that it's not a good thing to beat children also wasn't so commonly accepted like we do nowadays. But even in the Gemara, they're very against beating children. So you're just teaching him to be violent. Detayas, it says in the following Braita, what's an example? There's a Braita supporting what we just said a minute ago, which is why she put him in excommunication. Rish Lakish. Now we're going to have a story with Rish Lakish and excommunication. Hava Minater Pardesi was watching his orchard. Guy comes over and starts eating figs from his orchard. Rama Bekala, he screams at him, he doesn't listen to him. Amar you should go into excommunication. Amar le, the response of the guy now who was trying to steal his fruits. Adraba, the opposite. You should be excommunicated. What's going on here? Well, Rish Lakish he shouldn't have excommunicated him. He used it too loosely. Generally, if someone's stealing, you bring him to court where you deal with it, but you don't, or you grab it away from him. You don't excommunicate him right away. It's a process when you excommunicate someone. But if you accidentally excommunicate someone, then you can be excommunicated yourself. I was thinking it's like a game where you're supposed to, like, I don't know, I'll give you an example of Jungle Speed. You're supposed to take it, right? If you have the same card as someone else, you grab the thing in the middle. If you take it by accident, because it's all a game of speed, if you grab it and then it turns out you were wrong, you lose. Because if you do what you're not supposed to do, you lose out, right? And then you the opposite happens. It's as if you lost the round rather than you were trying to win the round. So it's the same thing. You tried to excommunicate, and the punishment is you get excommunicated yourself. So now, what happens? So the question is, who's really excommunicated in this story? So now, what happened? Right. So first of all, the guy says to him, if I owe you money, then I might owe you money, but I don't owe you excommunication for stealing your figs. Onto the Beit Midrash. So Rish Lakish goes to the Beit Midrash to find out what the story is. Is he really excommunicated? Amarle, shaloni doy, shalchainoni doy. His excommunication is good, meaning what he said about you, but yours is not, meaning you're excommunicated and he's not. Umay takante. So what should I do then to get out of it? Zil legabe, they say to him, go to him, delishrelach. He can undo it, only he can undo it. To which he says, lo yadamale, but I don't know who he is. How am I supposed to find this guy? So Amrule Zil, right? I can imagine the ad on Facebook, someone put me in excommunication today. Does anybody know who it is? How I can find them, right? But those days, forget about it. Amrule Zil lebe nesia delishrelach. So go to the house of the prince, the nasi, and he will undo it. Detanya niduhu ve'enu yodea mi niduhu, mi nidahu yelechetz al nasi v'yatir lo niduyo. If someone puts you in excommunication, you don't know who, go to the nasi, and the nasi can do it. Second story we saw, where they go to the nasi to try to get rid of an excommunication. Amar Rav Huna. Ve'usha itkinu. Rav Huna says in Usha, when the Sanhedrin was in Usha, they instituted. Av beitin shesarach ein menadim otem. Okay, this is a bit of a different approach than before. He's the head of the Beit Din, and he does something wrong. We don't exactly know here what he does wrong. You don't excommunicate him. Ela omerlo, he kaved v'shev bebeitcha. We do say, leave your job. Go and sit at home. Okay? Chazar v'sarach, if he does it a second time, though, then minadim otem. Then already we excommunicate him. Mipnei chilul Hashem. Right? We want to avoid excommunicating him because of the chilul Hashem. If he does it twice, we have no choice. Because then it becomes a chilul Hashem if he continues with this action. And everyone makes mistakes sometimes, but twice already is a problem. Upliga de Rish Lakish, but this disagrees with Rish Lakish. De'amar Rish Lakish, Talmid Chacham shesarach ein menadim oto b'farhesia. If a Talmid Chacham goes wayward, does something wrong, we don't excommunicate him publicly. Shene'emar v'chashalta hayom v'chashal gam navi imcha laila. You might fail, and then if the navi fails with you at night, why at night? Kaseyu kilaila. Cover him like the nighttime, meaning keep it under the carpet. Okay, if it's a Navi, if it's a prominent person, don't. Here, Rish Lakish is basically arguing with what we just saw, and even if it's repeated over and over, we don't excommunicate them. Right. So even though he was very loose to excommunicate the robber, he doesn't want to do it when it's a prominent person. Marzutra chasida ki mechayev tzorva merabanan shamta. When Marzutra Chasida needed to excommunicate someone, first he excommunicated himself. He was showing, this is not easy for me to excommunicate the Talmid Chacham. Then he would excommunicate the Talmid Chacham as well. Then, when he would go home, leave the Beit Midrash at night and go home to his house, first he would undo his own, and then he would undo the other person. Now, he didn't leave a Talmid Chacham excommunicated for more than the daytime. Right? This is something you can learn from there, which is that you can put yourself in excommunication, you can also take yourself out. If you're a Talmid Chacham, if you're a student. Rav Papa, or a Talmud scholar, I should say. Rav Papa, I should be rewarded. I've never once excommunicated a Talmid Chacham, right? A Torah scholar or a student of Torah. Ella. So what if we assume there must have been a case where there was a student in the yeshiva that needed to be excommunicated? So what would he do if he never did that? He did like what they did in Israel. Ma'arav is always Israel in the West. They would take votes and give lashes to Torah scholars, but they would to Torah students, but they would never do it for excommunication. My shamta. Where do we get this word shamta? How do we know it's excommunication? Amarav, shame mita. It's a name of death. It's almost like saying the kiss of death, right? It's almost like a part of death, like getting excommunicated. U'shmuel amar shma ma yiyeh. Should be desolate, right? Where it's like having nothing in your life because you're excommunicated. Umahanya beiki tichya b'tanura. And it's effective like oil on an oven. When you oil the sides of the oven, there's always some of the oil that stays inside. Once you get excommunicated, there's some part of it that stays inside of you forever. Upliga de Rish Lakish, and this is opposite of what Rish Lakish says. We had another section like that before. Just like the excommunication goes into your 248 limbs, and when it leaves and it's done, it's as if, right, it was never there before. It leaves all your entire body. How do we know this? The city became cherem, which is from, right, the language of excommunicated. This is in Sefer Yoshua. When they would conquer lands, they would make a cherem. They would basically take all the property, and it would basically end up either going to you couldn't use it at all. Okay, so that was cherem. Cherem b'gematria, if you count the value of the letters, is 248. So it's saying cherem 248. It goes in. That's it becomes cherem, excommunicated. Right. This is a pasuk from Habakkuk. It says, in the anger, the rachamim, right, will be remembered, meaning rachamim will come in and the mercy will undo it. So that's the undoing. And rachem is like ramach evarim. It's 248. It's the same letters. Rachem b'gematria hachihavu. It's also 248. So you see it goes in and then it goes out. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Shti shamta agnuvta de kalba. Okay, put shamta on the tail of a dog, the iudida avda, and it will basically it will destroy the animal. Okay, you put it just on the tail, but it'll really get into the whole animal. Ta'ahu kalba, we're going to hear a story about this. Ta'ava achel masani de Rabbanit, it was eating the shoes of the rabbis. Nobody knew who was eating the shoes of the rabbi. So, or the rabbis, Vishamtule, they put him in Midoi. They said, whoever's eating the shoes of the rabbi will be excommunicated. Now, they didn't know it was the dog. What happened next? A fire started, his tail caught on fire. It devoured, destroyed the entire dog, burnt him entirely. Okay, another story. There was a big bully, one of these thugs, okay, a very violent person who was bothering one of the students. Rav Yosef. He goes before Rav Yosef. He says, put him in excommunication. He says, I'm scared of him. If I put him in excommunication, he'll come beat me up. Right? This is also very common. We're scared of people, right? You never know what might happen, right? You'll put someone in excommunication, and the next thing you know, they'll send people to your house and beat you up. Okay, put out an injunction in the court for him. And some people say it means that if he does that, he'll be excommunicated by the court. I don't know. You already excommunicated him. I don't know if he'll care. But anyway, some sort of suggestion of some sort of injunction of the court. In other words, get the court involved. That will protect you. Kolsha came to Mr. Finamine. He says, if I start bringing him to court, right, this happens sometimes you're having an issue with someone, and then you bring a lawyer. As soon as you bring a lawyer, they bring their lawyer, and all of a sudden it gets way worse, right? The whole thing escalates. So, well, the more so, I'm going to be more scared of him. Amarle, shikle achte bekada. Go take it and write an injunction, put it in a kad, then achte bekivre, put it in, we're now on Amabet, put it in bring it to the cemetery. The kare be alpha shipure ba'arba'in yom. Blow the shofar 1,000 times in the course of 40 days. Azil avid hachi, he did this. Wait till you see what happens. Pakakada, okay, after all this blowing and all that, the jug breaks. Umit alama, and it caused the death. It sounds like a bit like a voodoo doll. The guy died. Okay, so here you see that here we have this case of somebody thinking that having an issue with someone, scared of him, but came up with some solution. Again, it's a very strange solution, really hard to understand in order to resolve the issue. My shipure, why shofarot? Because the word shipure is like shen nifraim mimenu, that we're paying back he's getting his punishments. My tavra, why shfarim? Okay, tet and shin switch in Aramaic, shfarim, which is the sound from the shofar. Rav Yitzchak Bered Rav Yehuda, Tavre Bate Rame. Okay, which means the shofar is so strong it can break the big houses. Okay, it can break it down. Okay, next, Tanya, as it says, Amar Rabban Shimon Gamliel, Kol makom she'anu chachamim enehem, o mita o oni. As what we mean here is the shofar blast of this person, this Torah scholar was able to break down big houses, right? Can basically, we've seen this in many Talmudic stories, the rabbis put their eyes to someone, they can either kill them or cause them to be impoverished. That's the end of that whole section of Nidui. Now we're moving back to the Mishnah of Hanazir v'Hamitzorah mitumato l'tarato. Okay, if you didn't listen to Daf Mishalahem this week, they have a whole thing about excommunication, so worth listening to. The Nazir and the Mitzorah, if they went from tumato l'tarato, from being impure to being pure, then they can shave on the holiday. Ba'amine Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Zera. Again, he asked the question, Rabbi Yirmiyah, B'shelo haya lehem pnai. Was it that they didn't have time before, meaning it ended exactly on the holiday? Or maybe they did have time before, they just didn't take care of it, and yet we still allow it on the holiday. So Amalei said, let's learn it from this source. Tanina says in a Braita, all these people that can shave on the Moed, that's because they didn't have time. But if they had time, then it's forbidden. Sounds like we're going with, it was only if they didn't have time. However, it says, an exception to this rule is Nazir u'mitzorah, a Nazir or a leper. Even though they had time, they're still permitted so that they don't push off their sacrifices. Let's say you didn't take care of it, your Nazirut ended just before the holiday, you didn't shave, then the holiday starts, and now if you don't do the shaving, because you have to shave your hair and do all these things, before you bring your sacrifices, or with your sacrifices, it's part of the process. So you're going to have to push off your sacrifices if we don't allow you, and that's more important than you having pushed it off. So then we allow it. Tana, another Braita, and this is a Braita that's going to take us basically toward the end of today's daf, which is to understand what this Braita means. HaKohen v'ha'avel mutarim begiluach. A Kohen and an Avel are allowed to shave. And we have to figure out on what day did it end, and what are we talking about here? Right, an Avel doesn't shave at all through not only the 7 days, but the Shloshim, the 30 days. And our Mishnah didn't mention these people, so we're going to see our Mishnah disagrees with this. Hi, Avel Hechidam. So first, let's start with the Avel. Even though it's the second thing, the Gemara starts off with the first. What kind of mourner? Mourner, we mean within the 7 days. So if it means his 8th day, meaning he finished his 7 days of Shiva, then his 8th day was the day right before the holiday, well, then he Now, you have to understand what happens here. You need shloshim. However, what's going to happen is, if on day number 8, it's Erev Chag, when Chag comes in, it's going to break the shloshim, because you already had day number 8 that was your first day of shloshim, or, you obviously had shloshim in the 7 days, but once the 7 days are over, you now need a unit to finish the 30 days. If you do one day of that, you're already done with shloshim. So and then the Chag comes, you're finished with shloshim. So basically, since your shloshim is going to end the next day on the regel, often when there's something that you can't do on the regel, we allow you to do it on Erev the regel. Just like Shabbat, you can't do it, you could do it Erev Shabbat. So if the 8th day was, right, we want to have a case where he was allowed to shave during the holiday. In this case, he should have shaved on the 8th day, because his shloshim was going to break already that night. And therefore, we should have allowed him already to shave. So, and shave, we mean shave, haircut, all that. So therefore, that's not the case. If his 8th day was on Shabbos, which was the Erev HaRegel, and then he couldn't do it on the 8th day, he could do it though on the 7th day, and we'll see why. He could have done it that year, that time on the 7th day. Why? And that's again, Sunday was the Regel, Shabbat was Shabbat, and Friday was day number 7 after his Shiva. So we had a day of the 8th day on Shabbat, but he couldn't do it on Shabbat, right? Remember, Shabbat is the day before the Regel. So the Regel is going to break the Shloshim. The day before, he should be able to cut his hair and shave, but he can't because it's Shabbat. So we should still be able to do it on Erev Shabbat. Why? Okay, now you have to know there's a machloket, basic machloket Abba Shaul and the rabbis. Until now, I've been basically telling you the rabbi's opinion, which is once you have one day of Shloshim, which is day number 8, then the Regel comes, it cancels it out. According to Abba Shaul, even if day 7 happened before the regel, it can cancel it out because day 7, when it comes to Avilut, we hold Miktzad Yom Kikulo. A part of the day is like the whole day, which means if you sat Shiva in the morning, right, your Shiva is over. That's why we break Shiva in the morning. And then your Shloshim technically starts that day, according to Abba Shaul. According to the rabbis, it really only starts the next day, even though you're done sitting Shiva, your Shloshim starts tomorrow. According to Abba Shaul, your Shloshim starts on day 7. But now, number 1, he holds like Abba Shaul, but that's not really relevant because Modim Chachamim LaAbba Shaul b'Shachal Shmini Shelo Li'Yom Shabbat Erev HaRegel Shemutar L'Galech B'Erev Shabbat. This is what we explained before. Even the rabbis who normally wouldn't say that you could shave on day 7 if it's Erev Chag, but if day 7 is Erev Shabbat and Shabbat is Erev Chag, then you couldn't have done it on Shabbat, even though technically you could have if it wasn't Shabbat. So we would have even the rabbis would allow you to do it on day 7. Whereas Abba Shaul would say, even if day 7 was Erev HaRegel, Erev Chag, you'd be allowed to do it. But in this case, where it's Erev Shabbat, which is then Erev HaRegel, of course you'd be able to do it, even according to the rabbis. So also then you'd be able to do a Friday, in which case this isn't what we're talking about. Because we need to find the case where he couldn't do it before, but he could do it during the holiday. So Lo Tzricha, now you'd also have to find a case where the Shiva, the Shloshim breaks the Shiva. If you're in 7 days of Shiva and they end on the Chag, and then the Chag breaks it, then it doesn't cover your Shloshim, and then of course you can't shave. So how can we find a case? So they say, Lo Tzricha, this is the case. We need it for Shechal Shvi'i Shelo Liot B'Shabbat Erev HaRegel. The 7th day falls out on Shabbat, which is the day of the Regel. Now, Tana Bara Safar. Now we're going to have a machloket between our Mishnah, which didn't mention this case. You can't ever do it during the Regel, during the holiday, and the Braita that said you can. Tana Bara, the Tana of the Braita, Safar Laka Abba Shaul, Damar Mitzad Yom Kikulo, V'Yom Shvi Olelo Lekanu Lekan. The author of the Braita holds like Abba Shaul, who says Mitzad Yom Kikulo. The 7th day is partially Avilut, partially Shloshim. Yom Shvi Olelo Lekanu Lekan. So the 7th day counts for both. V'kevan de Shabbat have anusu. Since Shabbat was the 7th day, he's honest, he couldn't shave then, even though theoretically that day could have broken the Shloshim, right? Because the Shloshim is going to break that night, the next day. So therefore, you would have thought that since Shabbat is anus, therefore, you're actually allowed to shave during the holiday because really the Shloshim theoretically was broken. You could have, it should have been allowed to do it Erev HaRegel, but you couldn't, so we allow you to do it after because after you're already done with the Shloshim. The Shloshim is over by the time the holiday starts because the Shloshim is broken. But that's only Abba Shaul, and that's the Braita. But Tana Didam, but our Braita, Savar Rabbanit, hold like the rabbis. De ambre lo ambrina miktzad yom kikulo. You don't say miktzad yom kikulo. Now, and by the way, I forgot to mention, in that case, day number 6, you can't do it on day number 6. In other words, before it was day 7 already, so we allow you to shave. But if Friday is day number 6, we're definitely not going to allow you to shave on day number 6. You're still in the middle of your shiva. Only when it's day number 7 do we say, well, since Mitzad Yom Kikulo, we can allow you to shave. When it comes out, remember, 7, 8, 9. That 8 was Shabbat, Regel was 9. We allowed you to do it on the 7th. But Tana Didan, our mission that didn't mention this as an option, Savar like Rabbanit, Amre lo amrina Mitzad Yom Kikulo, Va'akate lo shalem avelut deshiva. So he says, we don't hold Mitzad Yom Kikulo. That means the 7th day is not considered a day of Shloshim. Your 8th day is already the holiday, which means the holiday can't break the Shloshim because you didn't have any Shloshim before. So therefore, there's no way you could ever cut your hair on the Moed if you were in Advent. So that's why our Mishnah doesn't mention this as an option. Now we get to Hai Kohen. What's the Kohen case? Hai Kohen Hechidam. Ilema. Now, if you remember, the Mishmar, when you're on a Mishmar Kiuna, you work the whole week, you finish on Shabbat. We allow you can't cut your hair the whole week because we want you to make sure you come looking good and with a good haircut. So we make sure you do it before. That's why we don't allow you during the week. However, on Thursday, L'chvod Shabbat, you're allowed to cut your hair. So now, Ilema Dishlei Mishmarto Erev HaRegel, if his Mishmeret ended on the day that was Erev Chag, meaning it ended on Shabbat, the Chag was the next day on Sunday, Ibaile L'galuche Erev HaRegel, he should have done it, not on Shabbat, but he could have done it on Thursday, like any regular week of a Mishmeret. So, Lo tzricha, no, it must be for this case. Tishlim mishmarto b'regel. Many people explain it's a little complicated or it's a little tricky. There's some questions you can ask about this, but let's just go with it. Your mishmeret finished on Thursday, meaning that the holiday started on Thursday. Now, Tana Didan Savar, our Mishnah holds, and didn't mention this as an option because they said, Kevan ditnam b'shlosha prakim b'shana, you call them mishmarot shavot. 3 times a year, all the mishmarot on the holidays, basically, everyone was the same. Everyone would come and they would equally split. They would split all of the sacrifices of the holidays. It's as if Thursday starts the regel, your week was Sunday to Shabbat or Shabbat to Shabbat, you basically come in, Thursday is the holiday, you just continue. It's like one long mishmeret. You're not done until the holiday's over, and then you can't cut your hair that next week, basically, because it's your mishmeret. But Tana Bara Savar, the Breita that allows the Kohen on the regel to do it, holds even though you do get certain things, but it's as if you're not really on a mishmeret. It's really, there's someone who's in charge that week. Everyone was kind of in the temple, but it was really a main group it was their turn. And it's as if you finished your mishmeret. That means that if the regel was Thursday, you missed your opportunity to do it on Thursday. Because remember, when it normally, in a normal week, it ends on Shabbat, but we allow you to cut your hair on Thursday. This time, the holiday happened on Thursday. So basically, you can't do it Thursday. And then you can't do it the rest of the week either because it's, then you can do it. That's the whole thing. The Breita says you could do it on Chol Moed because you're done with your mishmeret. Even though you're still in the temple, you're not technically on duty that week. And therefore, the regular laws of mishmeret don't apply to you. Tanu Rabbanit. Here's a Breita. Kol elu shamru mutarim legalech b'moed, mutarim legalech b'mei avlan. All these people that we said you could do it on the holiday, you also, whoever can shave on the holiday can also shave if they're in Avelut. Meaning, if you, in the middle of your week of Avelut, you came back from Medina Hayam or something, and you were in Avelut, you'd be allowed to shave. So now they say, meaning you had some issue before, you were far away and you couldn't shave. Then you got back and you were in Avel, you'd be allowed to do it. But wait, isn't there a Breita that says, no, you can't do it on yes, Chol Moed, no for Avelut, when you're a mourner. So Amar of Chis, Amar of Shila, Kitan Yahacha Mutarin, B'shetachafu Avelav. When we say you're allowed, it's when you end up with Avelut and then another Avelut right after. It's not clear whether we mean after 7 days you had another Avelut or 30 days and 30 days. I don't know which one exactly, but the point is you had a multiple Avelut one after the other, and then we feel bad for you because it's really been a long time. So first you were in jail, then you became an Avel, then you had another Avelut. It's a really long time, so we let you. So they say, wait a minute. Well, if it's chafu avelav, you don't even need to have before been in jail and then have avelut and then another avelut, which makes sense more that we're going to see that it's really maybe 30 days and 30 days. Because afilu kulei almanami, anyone really would have this issue. Ditanya, even without having been in jail, we're still going to be lenient with you. Because it says in a Breita, chafu avelav ze'achar, if you end up with avelut and then another avelut right after. Hichbid sa'aro mekel batal, if your hair is really long, we let you shave or cut it. And you can launder your clothes. Apparently, Avelim can't launder their clothes. The debate, do we mean 7 days or a month? There's also a debate. Do we mean just you can't wear clean clothes? Or do we mean you actually can't do work of laundering your clothes? Some people say it's even both. But either way, you can wash your clothes in water. We allow you all sorts of, if tchafu avelav, without having been in jail before or something else out of town before. We allow you to cut your hair. So they say, what are you talking about? That still can be the answer. Why? There's 2 things. One is the Breita, the first one we saw, which is these are allowed in the Avelut also. If you were in jail and then you had Avelut and then you had another Avelut, will permit everything entirely. This other Breita that said you can't, the Breita that said chafu avelav, you don't even need the other things before. That's to allow it with a razor, but not with scissors, and it's allow it with water, but not to launder with water without laundry detergent and stuff. It's we allow you partial, but we don't allow you fully. It's and that's when you have one right after the other. If you have one right after the other, and before that you were stuck in jail, something like that, then we're going to allow even more. Okay, then we're going to allow it completely. From here we learn that an Avel can't do laundry. Tanu Rabbanan, last thing for today, just like they say you can't shave in the holiday, you also can't cut your nails. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi Matir. Rabbi Yossi says, no, nails are not the same. You can cut your nails on Chol Moed. They say just like you can't shave when you're in Avel, you also can't cut your fingernails. Rabbi Yossi Matir, likewise, same machloket. Does it apply to Chol Moed? Does it apply to Avelut? Yes, according to Rabbi Yehuda. No, according to Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi doesn't think cutting your nails is an issue for either one. Amar Ula halachak Rabbi Yehuda ba'avel Rabbi Yossi b'moed. He's stringent when it comes to Avelut. He's lenient when it comes to Moed. We saw this before, that maybe there's reason to be more stringent in Avelut than in Moed. But Shmuel has the opposite approach. Shmuel Amar halachak Rabbi Yossi b'moed u'ba'avel. We're now at the top of Yudchet. To Amar Shmuel halachak divrei mekel be'evel. When it comes to Avelut, we're always more lenient. So his approach is to go the more lenient approach. And with that, we'll finish for today. Have a Shabbat Shalom or Shavua Tov, everyone.